I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me share our slide deck just to get started here. And let me share. Gosh, it's been so long since I've done this. And let me know if you can see the slide deck that I'm sharing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Didn't need to do that. All right, that's better. So today is our monthly meeting of our Houston chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. And this was our Eventbrite image that we had sent out for our meeting today. And for the agenda, again, as usual, we just like to welcome any new members. I think everybody has been here now. And so, Mark, do you want to introduce Maggie for us, our guest speaker?
Sure, I'll be glad to. So good morning, everybody. We're pleased to have Maggie Sager. Is that how you pronounce it, Maggie?
Sager.
And she is the Gulf of Mexico Program Coordinator at Turtle Island Restoration Network. She leads initiatives focused on marine conservation, environmental education, and advocating for equitable access to clean water and air for all communities and wildlife. Her work includes working with grassroots organizing, microplastics research, and community outreach with a strong emphasis on combating climate change and holding plastics industry accountable. She collaborates with diverse stakeholders to advocate for long-term conservation policies that will protect ecosystems and address environmental justice. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in environmental science with a minor in leadership studies from University of Tampa. She's passionate about driving positive change through education, advocacy, and action. Maggie, I'll let you take over.
Yeah, we're not quite ready, Maggie. I'm going to continue with the intros. Thank you,
All
Mark,
good.
for the introduction, and then we'll get to that. So back to the agenda here. So after Maggie gives her presentation, and we'll have some questions and answers. As usual, we always go through some other miscellaneous topics, go through some status reports from our lever leaders, and then a meeting wrap up. And I always like to give everybody an opportunity to scan this QR code so you can get a link to the slides we're sharing today, or just you can access it directly through the bit.ly web link. You'll see that when we go through our slides, we have a lot of web links embedded on each page. And if you just go ahead and get a copy of the slide deck yourself, it'll be much easier for you to access the other slides. Let me go ahead and put that link in the chat also, so everybody has that. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So I did put that in the chat, or if you can take a QR code. I'm going to go ahead. I'm sorry. Somebody was talking. Okay,
Sorry.
so did someone want to say something?
I'm sorry, I'm going to mute our conversation here.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this slide deck, and now I'm going to bring up Maggie's other slide deck that she shared with us. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share again. I hear someone talking in the background. If you wouldn't mind putting yourselves on mute. Thank you. Okay, 1 second. There we go. You should be able to see the other slide deck now. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me just put this into slideshow mode. This is, oh, there we go. Okay, Go ahead and take it, Maggie, all yours.
All right, awesome. You can go ahead and switch to the second slide if that works. Thank you. So good morning, everybody. As Mark so graciously introduced me, thank you, Joe and Mark. My name is Maggie, and I'm the program coordinator at Turtle Island Restoration Network. And so in case you have never heard of Turtle Island Restoration Network before, we are an ocean conservation nonprofit, and we were founded a little over 35 years ago. Our founder began the project while he was assisting some sea turtle biologists in South America, and they were working to shut down some illegal sea turtle trading and hunting that was happening. And they were successful in that. They shut down a sea turtle slaughterhouse that was in Mexico. And so since then, our organization has grown a lot in our conservation work. So we have a staff out in California that does a lot of work for habitat restoration, and that includes planting a lot of trees and gardens and things like that to help sequester carbon. They do a lot of data collection and species monitoring of some endangered species up there. We also have a policy staff that works really hard to fight some ocean conservation issue, or help with some ocean conservation issues all over the world, like fighting entanglements and unsustainable fisheries practice. They do a lot of advocacy for protections on coastal areas and lands. And then here in the Gulf of Mexico, our office here is in Galveston, and so we focus largely on the conservation of our 5 species of sea turtles that we have in the Gulf. And then also to protect a lot of other wildlife that we find throughout the Gulf and on the coast, and throughout the whole watershed in our area. So we do this by fighting pollution, and then fighting the symptoms and the root causes of climate change. And we have many different programs that help us achieve this. So in Galveston, we have a lot of like marine debris removal programs. That's what some of these images are on this slide. So we do things such as marine debris surveys. We do beach cleanups, we do microplastics research, and we have a lot of campaigns locally to help fight single-use plastic items like straws and bags. We also have been successful in passing a bill in Galveston to ban intentional balloon releases due to the harm that they cause our wildlife and our environment. We're currently working on getting a statewide ban put in place for that. So we do some legislative work as well in the area. And we're also very involved in the fight against coastal development, plastic production, and chemical recycling, and then also the fossil fuel industry that we have for all of the damages that they cause to our environment and our health. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. And you can click it once. Okay, beautiful. So climate change is directly affecting a lot of our work. And so in recent decades, with the increased human activity that causes an increase to the amount of heat trapping gases produced, mainly caused by burning fossil fuels and the production of plastics, the Houston-Galveston region specifically is in a unique position of being at the heart of our fossil fuel and plastic production industry. As Texas is the top producer of crude oil and natural gas in the country, we have in Houston about 4,600 energy-related companies in the area. And then the Port Houston is the largest petrochemical manufacturing complex in the Americas. Can you click to the next picture? Thank you. And then also we are home to a number of chemical or advanced recycling facilities, which are promoting false solutions for plastic recycling. These facilities are using fossil fuels to burn plastic, which are producing hazardous and toxic waste that's getting into the environment, and also at the same time accelerating the impacts of climate change in the region with the waste and with the CO2 emissions. And so we have a lot of that in our area that we work on fighting. Can you go to the next slide? And then click it one more time. Thank you. And then we're also home to many plastic manufacturers. And so this is a map created by PERG, where you can see plastic producing facilities in the region. You can see a lot of red dots along the Houston Ship Channel specifically. And so these facilities are largely here due to our connection to the fossil fuel industry, as plastic is derived from fossil fuels. And so these facilities produce little plastic pellets that we call nurdles, if you've ever heard of them. And so these little plastic pellets often get lost in the environment during all stages of like production, shipping, transportation, everything involved. And they cause a number of issues for human and animal health. Could you click the slide once? Thank you. So this is an image of what these little plastic pellets look like. These are nurdles. So this image was taken, that's a few hundred nurdles in that little strainer that we found at one of our beach cleanup events. So these were all found on a Galveston beach within a 10-minute nurdle patrol, which a nurdle patrol is a citizen science data project that we participate in, where you set your GPS coordinates and you search for these little plastic pellets. And as you can imagine, on a beach, these can blend in really easily. They're really difficult to find. And so with a group of that day we had, I think, about 20 participants, they found just over 500 nurdles in 10 minutes, which is a fraction of what these facilities are allowed to let go into the environment every single day. And so they're really difficult to remove from the environment. They're really difficult to spot. And so whenever we have like big nurdle spills, which occur frequently, then we have all these pellets that get dispersed throughout the entire environment. And so these plastics are not only eaten by wildlife that could mistake them for something in their diet, like fish eggs or something, but they also absorb harmful chemicals from the surrounding area. So that is further polluting our environment. And so these facilities are contributing to climate change during the production stage, also with releasing billions of tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And then they're polluting our environment with these plastic pellets. So we do a lot to fight that for the sake of our wildlife. You can go to the next slide. And as I mentioned briefly before, a lot of our focus is on our species of sea turtles, of course. So we have 5 species in the Gulf of Mexico. There's 7 in the world, and all 7 species are endangered. So these are the ones that we have here in the Gulf. On the top right, that is a loggerhead sea turtle. On the bottom right, that is a green sea turtle. The one in the middle is a hawksbill. The bottom left is a leatherback. And then the one on the top left is my personal favorite for this area. It's our Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, which is it's our Texas state turtle. So in case you didn't know, we have a Texas state sea turtle. The reason that they are our state sea turtle is because they are the ones that most commonly nest on our beaches. Their nests are primarily only found in Texas and Mexico. And they're the most critically endangered in the world. They're the smallest of all the species. They're the only ones that nest during daytime, which causes a lot of dangers for them. And so we do a lot to specifically advocate for the sea turtle since they're so critically endangered. So for example, this year we had about 340 of their nests on Texas beaches, which is higher than last year. Last year was about 260. But in the past, a couple decades ago, we used to have tens of thousands of these that would come up and nest on our beaches. And so there's a lot of ways that climate change and pollution are affecting their ability to be able to nest here in Texas. And with all of our sea turtles that nest here, we have loggerheads and greens that nest here as well. And we're seeing fewer and fewer of their nests come up on Texas coasts. And so we can go to the next slide, please. And you can click it once. So one way that climate change is impacting sea turtles and marine life in the ocean is through ocean acidification and with water temperature rising, water temperature increases. It causes things like coral bleaching. Like you can see here, a lot of our sea turtles rely very heavily on coral reefs for protection, for where they live, for hunting when they get large enough to hunt. And so whenever whenever coral reefs are bleached, then that takes away vital habitat for not only the sea turtles, but a lot of marine animals. And then you can click the next one as well. We also are seeing an impact of climate change on these animals due to sea level rise. And so our sea turtles nest on beaches up in the dunes. And so as the sea level is rising, it's taking away their habitat for them to be able to nest successfully. So these are some projections of what Galveston Island will look like at like the minimal sea level rise that's predicted to the highest amount within the next, what are we at? About 75 years. Yeah, 75 years. The sea level could rise minimum 3 feet or up to 8 feet. And so compared to what it looks like right now, most of Galveston Island will probably be underwater. And that takes away a large habitat for the animals and for humans, for everybody who lives in Galveston as well. So that's a major concern. Can you hit the next slide, please? Thank you. And so in addition to sea level rise, climate change is of course causing more frequent and extreme more severe extreme weather events. And so for our region specifically, with that coupled with the accelerated sea level rise that Galveston feels, we are predicted to see higher storm surges, which will from more severe weather events. So this map right here is showing a prediction with by 2050, if we have a little less than half a meter sea level rise, which we're pretty on track for, we're predicted to start seeing higher storm surges of up to 15 feet in some regions or in some areas in this region. And so that is also taking away and destroying a lot of really critical habitats. Even this past summer with Hurricane Beryl, which was a Category 1, it wiped out pretty much all of our dunes on the island. And we still don't really have dunes on the island after that. And so with this upcoming nesting season for the sea turtles, which will be April through July, there's a lot of focus on trying to restore the dunes so we have dunes back in time for when it's time for our sea turtles to come up and nest. We can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, these are all some symptoms of climate change that are affecting our sea turtles. So one of the main ones being the loss of their habitat on land, and their availability to nest is a big one. That top left photo was taken on Galveston Island. That's one of our turtles that nests on East Beach. That's a Kemp's Ridley in there. It's kind of hard to see with the sand, but hopefully you can see it all right. So we're losing their beaches. Another big factor for climate change affecting sea turtles is sea turtles have temperature-dependent sex determination for their nests. So whenever the nest is warmer, then it leads to more females coming out of that nest. And so with our global temperature rising from climate change, it's leading to a skewed population ratio for our sea turtles. And so it's leading to more female sea turtles coming out of the nest. And in addition to that, whenever you factor in plastics, because we do find a lot of plastic on our beaches and in our dunes, a lot of microplastics, which is one of the things that our organization has been studying for the past 6 years. Whenever we have microplastics in those nests and in the dunes, it like compounds the effects of like trapping heat, and so it makes the nest even hotter, and it's leading to even more females coming out of these nests. And so that's even further hurting the population of sea turtles because there's not enough males in the population. And then additionally, as I have mentioned before, with the plastics industry, a lot of wildlife is eating the plastic, and so we find a lot of evidence of this. That bottom left photo, all of those holes in those pieces of plastic are all indicators of sea turtle bites. They have a diamond-shaped bite that they leave because their mouths are beaks, similar to a bird. So we find several pieces of plastic like that, showing us that these sea turtles are eating this plastic that's in their environment. And whenever they eat the plastic, it's not only harmful for them because, one, obviously they cannot digest the plastic, so it can cause a lot of issues in that regard, but also as plastic is pretty much like a sponge for harmful chemicals in the surrounding area, like any like oil and gas that's in the water or in the environment near the plastic, or fertilizers or pesticides, it all gets absorbed onto the plastic. So whenever a wildlife or an animal eats the plastic, it then exposes everything in their body to those harmful chemicals. So we're seeing that more often as well. And so overall, the effects of climate change are hurting these precious animals in a multitude of ways. Another big way that climate change is affecting sea turtles that scientists have been studying more recently and noticing more recently with the increase in water temperature and extreme weather events is it's shifting their migration patterns as well. If it's too warm in an area, it might indicate to them too soon that it's time to start migrating. They might arrive to the area that they're getting to before the vegetation that they need to eat is ready, or before they're ready to nest, and things like that. So the changes in their migration patterns are also being caused by climate change and is negatively affecting their populations. So can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So like I have mentioned throughout the slideshow a little bit, our organization is doing all that we can to fight this in a multitude of ways. So we have several pillars of how we're helping our sea turtle population and working on these ocean conservation issues. One of them is our commitment to protect and restore habitats. So we do that through, our public volunteer programs like our beach cleanups and our marine debris surveys. That's a big way to help protect these habitats, make sure that they're clean and ready for the sea turtles whenever they come up to nest, to keep the marine debris from ending up out in the environment. So we have those, and then we also are very involved in fighting coastal development, especially on the island. Everybody wants to have a beachfront house, which I totally understand. It's beautiful, but whenever you are putting in this hard concrete on the beaches, it's causing the beaches to erode faster. So we do a lot to ensure that there are protections put on our coastal areas and our beaches for these animals. We do a lot of advocacy to fight for policy changes and to fight the fossil fuel and plastics industry with the amount of pollution that they contribute to the area. And so we're involved in a lot of groups that do activism. We sign on to bills and help promote bills to try to put some practices in place to restrict the amount of pollution that these organizations or industries can emit. Right now, we're working on a plastic pellet bill, a NERDL bill, to hold the companies accountable and have a zero net emissions for their plastic pellets. Right now, they're allowed to discharge like a liter of those plastic pellets into the environment every single day, which a liter can hold about 20,000 of those pellets. And they exceed that every single day too. So we're working to get policy put in place to make it zero that they can emit, and put some more sustainable practices into their facilities. We also do a lot of education and outreach in our area. So we work with a lot of schools and specifically target schools with individuals who are most directly impacted by these plants being in their neighborhoods. So, a lot of coastal school districts, a lot of environmental justice, and BIPOC communities are disproportionately affected by this. So we do a lot of targeted outreach to these school districts, to these neighborhoods, to these communities, to raise awareness for what's going on in their environment and in their communities. And then we go to events and teach people about why they should care, teach people about ways that they can get involved and ways that they can help. Even if it's as simple as refusing plastic straws whenever they go out to eat, as a grassroots activism movement to reduce single-use plastics. If we have a lot of people that are refusing straws, we can eventually make a difference. And so just raising awareness for simple little sustainable swaps that people can make is another big part of what we do. And as I mentioned before, we have campaigns to reduce plastic usage. And then we work with our community a lot. Thankfully, in Galveston, we have a very supportive community for our work that we do. And so we have a lot of people that are on board with our mission and that are spreading the word of our mission to their friends and families and loved ones and et cetera, everywhere they go. So that also helps with, raising awareness for these animals. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So with that, there's a lot of ways that you can help if you are interested in getting involved or interested in becoming a part of our network and joining us in this fight. We have a lot of different projects that folks get involved in. Like I mentioned before, our beach cleanups, they're a lot of fun. You get to clean the environment. It's wonderful. So we have projects like our beach cleanups. We have our single-use campaign, our single-use plastic campaigns. I'm sorry. And then we always ask for support in advocating for policies that address climate change or for issues that affect marine life. And so ways to get involved include volunteering with us, donating, partnering with us, or joining our network to sign on to our action alerts and things like that whenever we send them out. And then also another big one is getting involved in local actions. And so this flyer that I have up here is for something that's upcoming in the Houston region. So we are, in case you've never heard of CERAWeek, CERAWeek is the Super Bowl of oil and gas conferences. So every year in March, all of the top oil and gas execs for the entire country and also world, there's international companies coming, all convene at CERAWeek in Houston at the Houston Convention Center. And so we are organizing a mass action to confront CERAWeek and to confront these oil and gas execs that are putting these fossil fuel plants in these people's communities that are polluting the environment and accelerating climate change. And so we're currently planning and organizing around that, but that'll be coming up at the beginning of March. It's like the week of spring break. And so if you want more information on how to get plugged into that, or if you want to come to the event, if you want to participate, if anything like that, I have the information there on the flyer, but I would also be happy to get you connected to the people that are organizing it, send you more information, anything in that regard if you are interested in joining us and standing up to these people that are polluting our environment and polluting our world. And so the more people we can get out there to confront them, the stronger our message will be. And they know that we're coming too. It's not a secret. And so anyways, that's something that's coming up that I would encourage you to get involved in if you're interested in. And we can go to the next slide. Perfect. And so if you want more information at all about anything that I mentioned on here, I have that QR code. It leads to our website. So it gives you more information about all of our programs that we do. So if you're interested in joining us as a volunteer, if you want to join our action network, if you want to make a donation to our work or get involved in anything that we're doing, I also have my contact information here. And so I'm always happy to talk with folks about what we do and how they can get involved. Or if you have any questions about our work that we do, always happy to answer those. And I think I spoke really fast because this is way earlier than I thought I was going to be wrapping up. So with that, does anyone have any questions for me? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great presentation, Maggie. Okay, I see, is that John Glover? You have your hand raised. Go ahead, please. We can't hear you, Mark. You have to unmute yourself.
There you go.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay, how do you get rid of nurdles? That's a great name, by the way, nurdle. How do you get rid of them once they're collected? How do you destroy them safely? Yeah, a quarter of nurdles, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the ones that we collect at our events, at least since I've been there, I personally hang on to them because I use them at education outreach events. Like I have jars of nurdles. But there is, so the research project that started this all, there's a fellow at A&M Corpus, his name is Jace Tunnel, and he started the Nurdle Patrol project. And so you can send them into him. He knows that we're an organization, so we use them for outreach. But you can send them into him, and he collects them at like their facility at Texas A&M. But whenever there are like nurdle spills and trillions of them go into the environment, and there are cleanups that happen. There was one that happened. There was a train car that tipped over a few weeks ago, or it was like the first week of December. East of Houston, and it released like trillions of these little pellets into the environment. And so a local organization hosted a cleanup for them, but the company that spilled them was supposed to hold a cleanup for them, and they claimed that they cleaned them up. But whenever Thea went out there, they were not. They were still all over the environment. They had, like, the company had maybe scooped up like the big scoops of them and just thrown them in the trash. But anyway, so Thea went out there and got evidence and collected whatever they could, and you can send them to Jace at A&M, like if you're getting involved in the project. And then from there, I know that he has a method of recycling them. I'm just not sure what it is. I just know that you send them to him.
Before I forget, Maggie, if you have any web links you would like to put in the chat, please feel free to go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
any other questions? Just raise your hand so I know you have a question. Oh, Mark, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, my question, I think there's actually two of them. I was just wondering about your outreach and advocacy. Have have you had any positive response from like Galveston City Council? And then my second question is about oil and gas, plastic companies.
Okay, so I'll answer your first question. So yes, we have had a positive response from City Council. We have a few councilmen that are very supportive of our work, and so they signed on to our bill whenever we passed the one for intentional balloon releases. With the NERDL bill that we're working on, we have some local support for that, but that one's we're planning on doing statewide, and. So yes, we do generally have a pretty positive response. Where we have had like pushback in the past is with coastal development issues. So like wanting to build out along the beaches, that's where it can kind of split the room a bit more.
And what about plastic companies? Have you done any outreach with them and tried to talk to them?
Yeah, so actually, our one of our partners, her name is Diane Wilson. She is the one that first introduced or like figured out that these plastic companies were discharging all of these nurdles into the environment, and so she actually sued Formosa Plastics in Matagorda Bay and won that settlement. And so, with all that money, she's invested it into organizations like Nurdle Patrol and into organizations that are fighting plastic pollution. And so with that, we have like raised awareness within the communities that are surrounded by the plastics companies, but the plastics companies do not want to talk to us. So we partner with people who have been successful in holding them accountable, and that's what our goal is with this new bill that we're introducing. But in general, talking directly with the plastics companies is not usually effective or successful.
Thank
Okay,
you.
next question. Kobe, I think you were first, and then Judith, and then Satya.
I'm just trying to like better understand these nurdles. Are they like, do they float on top of the water or do they sink below?
Yes, so that's a great question. They float on the surface for the most part, unless they've like deteriorated a lot into like smaller pieces, then they might get into the water column. But whenever we find them, it's usually whenever they washed up on shore. So we'll usually find them in the rack line, like at the high tide deposit line. And they'll be mixed in with like other fragments of microplastics because we do see, so nurdles are primary microplastics. So they're produced to be that small. We find a lot of secondary microplastics that are, like fragments or fibers or something that was once larger and has broken down into something smaller. So that's the main difference between nurdles and other microplastics. And they are considered microplastics because they're smaller than 5 millimeters in diameter. That's kind of like the benchmark that we use to define a microplastic or a macro. And so, yeah, they'll float on the surface and get tangled into and like float amongst like sargassum, the like seaweed that floats out in the water, which is a really important habitat for a lot of animals and a hunting ground for a lot of sea turtles. They hunt and eat the sargassum and animals that live in it. And so these plastics will like be woven into the sargassum and get easily mistaken there and eaten. And then whenever it's up on the shore and in that high tide line, then it starts affecting more like land animals, like birds and things will eat them, mistaking them for something else in their diet. And they can also be mistaken for like styrofoam pellets or like little tiny seashells. So they're really difficult to find and really difficult to remove. And so, and then there's trillions of them out in the environment. So yeah, we whenever we do our nurdle patrols, we're removing them from the shoreline.
Okay, next, Judith.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews of the Houston Recycling Collaboration, which is a plastics recycling effort. What do you know about that? How good is it or bad is it?
Yeah, so we as an organization are against the advanced recycling and chemical recycling that's being promoted in the Houston Recycling Collaboration. Because as what it is doing is taking this plastic that people are trying to recycle and burning it and using that as whatever they may use it for, like fuel sources and things like that. But whenever they do it, it's emitting a lot of really harmful chemicals into the atmosphere and into the communities where these facilities are. And so it's causing like increased health concerns for a lot of folks in the communities. Like we're seeing higher rates of asthma, even though it's still really new. It's we've seen a pretty immediate response to some health concerns and things. And it's being promoted really heavily by industries that have stakes in the plastic production like realm. So, you know, by an oil and gas company, by a plastic production company and things like that. So we see it as an organization as a false solution that we do not support. And yeah, there's a lot that can go into it, but for like the early stages of it, it's not seeming to be very, since it is such a new concept, it's not seeming to be very sustainable, and it's seeming to cause more harm than good in the environment.
Next, Satya. You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Yes. Hi, Maggie. I just wanted to understand what is the quick agenda of this CERAWeek you mentioned?
Yeah. So the actual conference itself is called CERAWeek. So like I said, it's the Super Bowl of all oil and gas execs. So there are a number of speakers coming from all over the world and from all the top oil and gas companies. And this is like their annual convening to discuss what they will be planning in the next year for their companies. And so for our action, our side of it, we are planning on having as of right now, the first day of the convention, we're planning on having a mass march outside of the convention to, disrupt them a little bit and tell them how we feel. And so that's the main event that's going on so far, that's being organized by Texas organizers. We have some national partners that are contributing to our efforts and who are coming in for it. And so there'll be also a variety of actions and events taking place throughout the whole week, since the conference is a week long.
And is it open for everyone to attend, or is it hosted only
Yeah.
for those?
The actual convention itself, CERAWeek, there is a fee you have to pay to attend. It's quite expensive.
Like
The last time I looked,
$1,000 per ticket.
very, very expensive. But
All
that
right.
doesn't prevent folks from, being outside and doing whatever
And
protesting
marching.
they want to do. That's right.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and so last year when we organized, we actually we had two people who bought tickets that were going to attend, and because of their ties to advocacy, CERAWeek ended up canceling their tickets, and they're so
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
even though they were going to pay the 10,000 anyways.
It's
but
interesting you mentioned that. I just wanted to add that I believe it was at last year's CERAWeek. We had our Citizens Climate Lobby representatives attend. At least two people joined and attended that I know of.
Wow.
Mhm.
Satya, anything else that you had there, or were you done with your
No,
question?
but thank you. Mhm.
Okay, and Maggie, if you have the web link for that event at CERAWeek, if you want to put that in the chat.
Yes, I will get that in the chat right now.
Okay, so next was Roger, and then Dina, I have you on the list after Roger.
My question was answered.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, Dean, your turn.
How long do nurdles take to biodegrade?
That's a great question. I believe so there's a lot of different like material or like types of so these are like little plastic resin pellets, and so depending on like the chemical composition of it, it could take anywhere from like 30 years to several hundred years, depending on just like what the actual that batch of pellet is made up of. With some of the collections of nurdles that we've sent into Nurdle Patrol, they've been able to identify, like how long that nurdle has been in the environment, even just like based on the color, like the more yellow it is, the longer it's been in the environment, the more clear it is, the newer it is. And then they've been able to, like break down that plastic to figure out like what it's made out of, what type of resin it is, and kind of determine like what the degradation life would be on it.
It seems that plastics are the new Roman concrete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, as far as questions, if anyone else has a question, we can take one more, and then for time, we'll have to move on. Does anyone else have a last minute
There's,
question?
I wanted to follow
there's
up on-
Andre.
I want to
Andre
follow up
does.
on the bioplastic thing. So specifically for biodegradable or advertised as environmentally friendly PVC and PLA, are those actually any better as far as you know?
So there's a lot of like greenwashing that occurs frequently with like sustainable products or like biodegradable products. A big issue with biodegradable products is they'll get mixed in with regular landfill trash, and then they won't actually biodegrade because there's not like bacteria in that landfill that can break it down. Whereas like if it was a material that's able to be composted, that can be handled differently. But like composting materials don't break down the same way in a landfill as they would in the space that is supposed to be done. So I would say it really depends on the material and their company. There are some like we've done some research onto like biodegradable like straw options and things to ask restaurants to offer as like an alternative to a plastic straw. And it takes a lot of really diligent research to figure out if it's a greenwashing, like product, or if it's actually something that is sustainable in the environment.
Is there
So there are some out there.
Is there a resource where you can look this stuff up and say, here's a particular product? Has anyone evaluated this?
Not off the top of my head, like not like a specific resource. I've done a lot of like going down a rabbit hole research to figure some of the products out. But there are like one of the resources that I use is I'm on a listserv with like marine scientists from all over the world that do research on these products to try to find alternatives. And so that, for example, is a resource that I use of just sending this product into the space with several scientists who have spent years dedicated to that specific research topic, and they can help me determine it somewhat. So
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll wrap up this section, and Maggie, so much. That was really a wonderful presentation, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank y'all so much for having me. And yeah, if you wanna get in contact or anything, if you want to volunteer, I'm always taking volunteers. Just let me know. I'd be happy to get you set up.
Thank you. Feel free to stay on or drop off. Okay, let me share my screen again and we'll continue. All right, so next topic, let me move this out of the way. I think most people know that immediately right after we finish our meeting at 12 noon Houston time, our CCL National Organization always has their monthly meeting starting immediately at noon. And for this Saturday, the national guest speaker will be Lucera Marquez, if I pronounce that right, Associate Director, Federal Climate Policy at the Center for American Progress. And the methods to join that session, if you'd like to, are here in the bottom, either by going to cclusa.org/meeting or dialing on the phone number, or going to cclusa.org/live stream. And usually those are very good follow-up sessions that occur. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, so next item here, because we are a climate advocacy organization and we encourage and really request all of our volunteers to take action, here's something that you can do immediately today after our meeting if you are so inclined. And so here, do your part to help solve climate change, take action today, right? So we do a lot of emailing and contacting our members of Congress. That's a large part of what we do. And so there's a new current campaign right now to send emails. And then you can see here on the slide, research shows that other than meeting with your member of Congress, personal emails and letters are the next best effective form of advocacy. We encourage all of you to generate as many letters to your member of Congress as possible each month. Setting a goal for your chapter is one good way to do that. And so that's why during our meeting today, we're taking time to share this and to request that everybody participate in that. And so we always have these automated emailing tools already set up, and it's really simple. Just click a few times and send an email to Congress Today. And so earlier today, I did put the web link for the slide deck in the chat. Let me do that one more time also, so everybody has that, and you can go ahead and help with this. Just get back to that. I'll put that in the chat again right now. So it's there, and we're not going to take time during the meeting to do that, but I really hope that everybody helps out and does your part to help with climate advocacy. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So we have some policy changes coming up due to the current political situation. And we have an excellent YouTube that was created here by Jen Tyler with our CCL National Organization. And this YouTube video talks about 3 opportunities to pass climate change policies through the federal government this coming year. And those 3 areas are with a carbon border tariff, policies. Someone, can you go on mute, please? Policies to support clean energy technology and reforestation and wildfire mitigation. And so I'm going to go ahead and play that video. It's a very quick, I think it's a 2-minute video. It's very interesting. And I'm going to bring that up and we'll play that now. Oh, I think I have to change the way I'm sharing so you'll be able to hear the sound. Let me make sure I do that. Let's see. Yep, share sound and optimize. Okay, now we're set. This should work.
If you're like me, you're probably hearing a lot right now from environmental groups about fighting to protect climate progress. That's true, but defense isn't enough. We've also got to push to pass climate policies, and not as many people are talking about that right now. So let's talk about it. I wanted to share 3 areas where we have real opportunities to pass policies in 2025 that will benefit the climate. The first one, a carbon border tariff. The EU is in the process right now of rolling one out. If we implement something similar, it's going to make a really big difference. With around 25% of global carbon pollution tied to trade, policies like this would have a huge global impact. Number 2, policies to support clean energy technology. There's already a ton of bipartisan support for these policies. We've seen that with things like the Energy Permitting Reform Act. But next year, there's still going to be a lot of discussion on finding ways to build new technologies in a way that protects communities and the environment. And lastly, reforestation and wildfire mitigation. Bipartisan solutions in the Farm Bill and other legislation could advance reforestation and forest health initiatives. Let's not just settle for playing defense. Let's seize this moment for climate action. Learn more and get involved at cclusa.org/join.
Okay, so that's what our policy is for this coming year coming up. And hopefully everybody will continue to attend our meetings and stay tuned on how we can help participate with that. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Now, some of you may not be aware, but we do have 2 conferences every year that we put on from Citizens Climate Lobby. We have our large summer conference where we actually meet in Washington, D.C., and we combine that with our lobbying of our elected members of Congress in Washington. And then we have a year-end December conference, which was just completed. And all of these key sessions are recorded. They're all on YouTube. And we have our YouTube playlist here. I'm just going to click on that. And when that opens up, you're going to see there's a bunch of sessions here that are all available for you to play back at home. But there's one key particular one that I'm going to play here because this is really critical. And you can see in the slide here, I labeled this. I said, why does CCL do what we do? We do a lot of lobbying. That's one of our key efforts. And I'm going to play this video here, which was an interview with Senator-elect John Curtis from Utah. And I was so impressed when I heard his speech. And hopefully you'll like this as well. It's worthwhile listening to, and I'm going to play that now.
I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. Though I suspect Senator-elect Curtis probably doesn't need much of an introduction with this group. Still, I think it's worthwhile to note how important his leadership has been in Congress over his last several terms. Senator-elect Curtis has helped advance important bills like the BEST Act and the Growing Climate Solutions Act. But most importantly, when he founded the Conservative Climate Caucus, his leadership really helped grow the space for conservatives to talk about and to engage on climate. Most recently, he has been leading efforts to link trade and climate with his introduction of the House version of the Prove It Act. We are very grateful for all of his work and his willingness to join us today to give us his thoughts as we continue to try to advance bipartisan legislation this Congress and next. So thank you, Senator-elect Curtis. We're so grateful for you and your leadership. And so it's my pleasure to hand it over to you. Thanks.
Oh, I just must tell you and everybody on the line, you are so good for my ego. And I don't know if you can all see it, but the thumbs up and the hearts and the applause, I just would like to capture this moment. So thank you. And I'm just going to tell you, I can't think of any group I'd rather speak with today. And I wish that we were all in person. There's so many of you I know and enjoy. And before I even say anything, I'm just going to give a big shout out to my folks in Utah. If you're not from Utah, this is when you're all jealous. Of course, we have our beautiful landscapes, our beautiful outdoors. And my first year, when I was elected to Congress, the folks from CCL reached out to me, and I had been the mayor of Provo, and we'd worked really hard on things like clean air. And I thought I was pretty good at a lot of this. And so we went on a hike, and as it turns out, I don't remember the exact hours, but it was over 8 hours, our hike. It was a long hike. And I got to know a lot of people from CCL. And during that hike, they asked me a super interesting question. I told them what I was doing for clean air in Utah and listed quite a few things and what I thought were quite a few accomplishments. And somebody in the group said, yeah, but what are you doing about carbon? And if I'm honest, it caught me off guard. I had spent very little of my time thinking about carbon, about greenhouse gas emissions, about climate. And in Utah, we were talking a lot about clean air, tailpipes, exhaust, and things like that. And not long after that, I found myself in Washington, D.C., caught up in quite a discussion. And if I'm honest, I was at a real loss on how to respond. And so I responded like a lot of Republicans typically respond, not so much pushing back, but more dodging and feeling very uncomfortable when asked about climate and looking for other conversations. And so I could tell very quickly that the people that were asking about that were not satisfied with my answers. And I didn't feel like they were good answers myself. So I started leaning into this and trying to learn more about climate, about carbon, about greenhouse gas emissions. And it made me a little bit nervous. And I'm telling you, it made my staff very nervous because Republicans, particularly 7 years ago, just don't talk about climate and carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm just going to pause for a little bit in my story and give a big shout out to all of you. At that pivotal point, when I was trying to figure my way out, it would have been really easy for my good CCL friends and others to criticize me for not supporting certain bills or for some habits in my own life. And they didn't. They instead found things that I did that they liked. They found bills I supported that they liked. And I'm very well aware it was very inadequate for what they would have hoped or aspired to. But that approach of embracing me and making me feel good about myself and what I was doing actually inspired me to want to do more. It had just the perfect effect on me. And so instead of being satisfied with the very, very little that I was doing, I wanted to do a whole lot more and learn a whole lot more. And as I did, I had some serious aha moments. one of those aha moments was, wait a minute, you don't have to be a Democrat to be good at this. You don't have to give up conservative principles to be good at this. And there's really most of what Republicans would put forth for energy policy is right in line with what many of my Democratic colleagues would put forward. So why were we afraid to talk about this? And I think the answer is we just didn't know a whole lot about it. We didn't know what the alternatives were. We didn't know what our own solutions were. And so as I started to talk more about it, I knew that it wasn't enough for John Curtis to talk about climate. We had to get Republicans talking about climate. And some of you have heard this. So I'm sorry to give you a story you've already heard, but I think it's a pretty fun story. I went to my staff and I said, hey, we need to organize, right? We've got to, as Republicans, we have to do a better job of talking about this. And my staff didn't disagree with me, but it made them very nervous. A Republican talking about climate from a state where our state rock is coal, and where I have a county called Carbon County, was a little scary for my staff and for me. But we jumped in and we felt like what we needed to do was create a caucus of Republicans to come together. And there are several other caucuses. There's the Climate Solutions Caucus, the Teddy Roosevelt Caucus, but there was no one place for Republicans to go and be safe and experiment and try different things and learn. And so we created the Conservative Climate Caucus. My staff smiled and said, that's great, John. You're going to get you'll get 5 other members who will join you in that caucus, and you go and have a good experience. Imagine how delighted we all were when we made the announcement that we would do the caucus, and not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, not 9, but dozens of people came up to me. We did almost no recruiting. They literally came to me and said, I want to be part of your caucus. It's finally time for us to be doing this. And the way I've interpreted that is that Republicans were tired of getting their teeth kicked in at town hall meetings. They were tired of not having answers. They were tired of of looking like they didn't want to leave the earth better than we found it. So over time, we refined our talking points and we made them really comfortable for Republicans. And I'll just tell you one of the things, and by the way, they're very similar to the way that you approach it. And that is, we don't have a litmus test. You don't have to be really good to join our caucus. You just have to be willing to join the caucus. And so we don't care if you think climate's a hoax. We want you in the caucus. And something really interesting happened as people joined the caucus, even though they were very tentative. The more time they spent with us, the more experiences they had, the more comfortable they grew talking about climate. And as they grew comfortable talking about climate, they stopped worrying about the science and they started worrying about how you reduce carbon. And it's almost a magical thing. If you bring people in, you have a good experience, as you all did with me, then they relax a little bit and get more comfortable and will take more chances. And so I've always been very proud of the number of people in the caucus. I mentioned 85 the other day, and some of you know Grace from my staff. She kind of slapped me and said, no, it's 87. So we're up to 87 House members now. I think we'll quickly get to about half of all House Republicans who are part of this caucus. And that is a caucus for Republicans with its first tenet that the climate's changing and Matt's had some influence on it. Now let's talk about what we're going to do about it. And I think it's just really brought up some great conversations. My colleagues on the left have been very, very supportive and encouraging. And I think that says a lot about their genuine approach to climate. It doesn't have to be their way. It's all about reducing emissions and whoever's got the best ideas. And I think there's a couple of good litmus tests of how we're doing. And one of them that I like to use is in the Energy and Commerce Committee. 7 years ago, if climate was brought up, there was quickly a debate about the science. Today, if climate's brought up in that committee, there's a debate about methods. What methods reduce the most emissions? What methods are the most effective? What ones are the most cost effective? Well, let's be honest, that's a good debate. And if we have ideas out there, and I think, and we'll talk about the IRA in a minute, I think there's a couple of spots in the IRA where we could spend money better. Well, that's a good debate, right? We need to be having that debate and not be afraid of that debate. So as you all know, I decided to run for the Senate last year. It was a hard decision, and one of the things that made it really hard is that I would have to leave the caucus behind. I had worried the whole time that I had the caucus that as I left, it would die. Imagine my delight when Marinette Miller Meeks jumped in and stepped up and said, I want to, and I will lead that. And then we had a number of vice chairs, Buddy Carter, Tim Walberg, Greg Murphy, Chavez Dreamer. We lost Mayor Chavez Dreamer, but I think she'll still be around and doing good things. But these are really good qualified people who are step up and leading the caucus. Well, all right. I'm going to run out of time. I'd love to talk to you all afternoon, but at some point they'll cut me off. Let me just share a couple of thoughts. I mentioned the IRA, and I know that you're talking about the IRA. And previously it was mentioned that 18 of us signed that letter to Speaker Johnson. I'm just going to tell you that's no small thing. That is the first letter that my office has ever spent to our speaker. Members just don't send letters to their speaker. It's not something you do because it puts the speaker in a bad place. He doesn't like, you've done this publicly. This is a very public letter. You put 18 names on it. But that tells you how committed these 18 names were on that letter to give that to Mike Johnson. And to his credit, he responded with a great response, which was, I'm paraphrasing, when it comes to the IRA, we'll use a scalpula. And here again, I think that's a good approach. We shouldn't be afraid to carefully look at that IRA and see if there are things that could be done better. And so as we move into next year, I can't tell you what the future will hold for the IRA, but with our margins so narrow and with so many of us committed to the good parts of the IRA, I think that bodes well. Now we'll see. There's huge pressure, as all of you know, on spending. And that should make us all watchful and careful. And I'll go back to what you just heard before me about how important your lobbying efforts are and your relationships are and the work that you do, how important that is, because it does make a difference. Okay, a couple of things quickly. Permitting reform. It's probably what I'm asked about the very, very most. And I wish that I had a perfect answer, but I can tell you that people are working behind the scenes. They haven't given up for this year. It is a heavy lift to get something done this year. But the most important people in this drama have not given up. And I don't want to give away a lot of inside conversations because they're shared with me, I think, in confidence. But I've talked with people who are in decision-making abilities, the chairman of these committees, who are having frequent conversations, bicameral and bipartisan conversations about how to get permitting reform across. At times, it seems like we're very close, and at times, it seems like we're very far away. And the way I describe it is I think we're still not all speaking the same language. Some people, it's pipelines, some people it's NEPA, some people it's transmission, and trying to bring that all in together is proving to be very difficult. The Prove It Act, I'm really excited. We had so many co-sponsors on the Prove It Act, and I will just touch on that and say that I think it is a really possible cross-section with President Trump's tariffs objectives and with climate. And I certainly have not talked to the president about it, and I can't speak for him or his administration. But trust me, there are many of us that are going to point out, Mr. President, if you'd like to do tariffs, here's a really good way to justify those tariffs. And here's a good way to make those tariffs fit a situation where, as you all know, we put a lot of restrictions on U.S. businesses, and somebody from another country doesn't have to meet those same restrictions. And that might be a really good way to do tariffs. And of course, carbon jumps out really, really loud and strong in that conversation as well. Well, I'm not sure who's in charge and who's going to cut me off. I think I may have a minute or two, but I will simply just say thank you. And I'll let the host decide if there's a time for a question or two. I'll let you decide on your timing. If you want to jump in and interrupt me.
So I think that was a good place to stop. So just to put this all into context and perspective, so that was recorded 1 month ago in our December conference. And this goes to my main point that I put on that slide. I said, why does CCL do what we do? And this is the reason we do what we do. We start conversations and good things happen. Any feedback from that? Anybody?
Hello, how y'all doing?
Hello.
Hello, my name is Travis London. I had been following y'all for like a couple of years. I had met two of y'all members at the Power Coalition. But I want to just say that it was a good idea to have the Republican caucus because I had went to I was spoke at the Poor People's Campaign, an event in Ohio, in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they had concerns about like the 6 coal barges going into their water system, and they couldn't get the information into the newspapers. I had to put it in the Louisiana newspaper, combined with the company that ran into the Sunshine Bridge, because they were the same company. Iowa, there's another place that had good Republicans that try to go against the carbon capture project, and some in South Dakota. So making a Republican caucus is a great idea because, like, you know, environment affect everybody, and it would be good for everybody to come together against the solutions that necessarily look like are gonna make the situation work as far as carbon capture and other projects like blue hydrogen and so forth. So I just want to commend on the creation of Republican caucus.
Thank you, Travis, for your feedback. That was great. Does anybody else have any thoughts you want to share? You're all being very quiet. Go ahead, Dean.
It's been a few years since I was in touch with my local chapter much, but last time I was, the person in charge felt really tied in knots by struggling to figuring out how to talk to conservatives in the area. So maybe I should pass that information on. Or was that video one that was already widely shared among CCL chapters?
This video was recorded during our December conference, which was attended by at least 1,000 people.
Okay.
And it's publicly available to all CCL volunteers. It's not something that's restricted or we're trying to keep hidden. This is for everybody to be aware of.
So it's probably already been seen, but still good to know that there are people coming out with views like this.
Exactly. All right, well, I'm going to continue on. Let me share my screen again. All right, so we'll keep going. Oops, I skipped a slide that I always like to review during our meetings. So now we're at the point in our meeting where the question is to have a group discussion and some reflection. And so what can I do as a volunteer climate advocate? Most of you have been part of CCL for a while now, or maybe some of you are newer. But I think in general, everybody can see basically what we do and what we try to do. And so let's just have a quick roundtable. And so what can I do as a volunteer? Anybody? Just jump right in. This is an open discussion.
So I garden and I have two compost stations, and I try to encourage my neighbors that if they have like food products, don't throw them in the trash. Could bring them to me, like put them in a bucket, bring them to me. They are an older like crowd, but is there like any advice you could give me to like try to like nudge them to like buy into like saving those scraps and sending them to me? Like, I mean, I have enough scraps, for but like I just try to like get the community involved, and help out.
Excellent feedback, Kobe. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Any other ideas of what each of us can do?
I was going to mention that I sent out an email yesterday. I didn't have everybody's addresses, but Houston Wilderness, we've been involved with them in the past, and they have some plantings coming up. Mostly they plant trees in underprivileged neighborhoods where there may be industrial smokestacks and things like that. But They have some plannings coming up starting in March 9th and March 15th. So if anybody's interested in that, I could put their web address in the chat.
Yeah, please put
like.
that web link in the chat, Dan, and thank you for bringing that up. I'm sure not everybody is aware of that.
Okay.
Okay, and I see Jocelyn, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Hi.
And do you want to turn on your camera?
Well, I would, but I am like, my apartment's kind of a mess right now, so sorry, not today. But
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, next time. But it's not a volunteer opportunity, but something I've, it's interesting. Like I've encouraged, not even encouraged, but because of I've actually stopped buying from Amazon and stopped using Amazon for like the things that I need, and rather just like going to the store. And every time I tell people in my community about that, I encourage them to do it, and they actually are. And I find that that is also something else, not that it's boycotting, but rather like you don't need to, you can put effort in to your own life, and the products that are right down the street are better than having it shipped across the country for you to get, the same products. So it's not like a volunteer thing, but I just found that to be a New Year's resolution that's working.
Thank you, Jocelyn. That was great. Travis, take yourself off mute. Here we go.
Okay. The guy that first started, he was talking about compost. I do farming as well. Y'all can follow me on Facebook. Is Be Everything Farming. It's a program that's funded by Movement Training Network and Indian Food Bayou for the indigenous people. And I will be sharing like ideas for compost, because they got certain like fruits and vegetables that keep rodents out of gardens or near homes and stuff, and that might encourage people to give you some more compost and stuff. And also, if y'all looking for any updates on the fight against carbon capture or any other solutions that people came up with that people are against, that'll also be shared on Be Everything Farming as well. And I also got a WordPress website, Be Everything Farming Be Everything Farming. I'll share that information with y'all on the CCL Facebook page.
Thank you so much. I really
Thank you, Travis. Thank you,
You're
Travis.
welcome.
Anybody else? We can take one more before we have to move on. Roger.
I hit the wrong thing.
Well, that's fine. It's just as well as you did, because why don't you talk about
I was
the
giving
cocktails and
Travis thumbs up.
conversation? Oh, okay. Roger, go ahead and talk to us about the next cocktails and conversation.
Okay. Is there any, can you let me share by any chance? I just have one slide.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Let me get that up. All right. So here I go. Share.
And for those of us, Roger, some of us may not know what cocktails and conversation is, so maybe you can provide some background also, and including the details of what's coming up.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about it. You have to give me permission to share.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try to do
anyway,
that.
Basically, every month we have this group called, or it's kind of a webinar, cocktails and conversation. It's an informal session where we get an engaging speaker, much like Maggie Sager, where we let them have the floor for a half hour, and then we go through questions and answers. And we had a number of really engaging, really good speakers. So if you didn't get to the conference last September, or even if you did, because we had multiple presenters there, Dr. Julie Burwald, who is an expert in corals, and actually Maggie be very interested in this as well, because with the link kind of to turtles, but she's an expert in Gulf of Mexico corals, and she gave an incredible talk about, and it's very interesting because corals, as you probably know, are in decline around the world. And but there's one location in Honduras that, in spite of the higher temperatures and like the other corals around the world are experiencing, is seemingly thriving. And she's trying to figure out why. So anyway, she's going to be our speaker. It's next. Let's see if I can share now. I'll put information into I'll put information into the chat so you can get the link to get details. That link is if you're in you have access to Citizens Climate Lobby website, but I'll provide the Zoom link as well. But like I said, what is it? It's a reprise of her outstanding conference presentation. And she's an ocean scientist. She's written several books, including, and she's been on New York Times and National Geographic, and just a really engaging speaker. So that's just want to invite everybody. It's next Saturday. It's a Zoom at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, I'm going to share again and we'll wrap up what we have left in our agenda. Okay, so this is the portion of the meeting where we go through our 5 lever status reports. And for those of you that may be somewhat new, this word that we use called a lever. A lever is how you can get leverage to do things in a more effective, better way. But a lever is just a team of people. And so these are our team leaders for our lobby team, Grass Tops, Grassroots, Media, and Chapter Development. And we're just going to go through each one to see what might be new. Judith, lobby team?
Yeah, hi. We still have some open lobby liaison positions. So if you're in Texas 09, Texas 10, Texas 22, or Texas 36, and would like to get a little bit more involved, we would love to have new liaisons for those positions. But you can go slow. I mean, I can help you along with creating meetings. And you can decide later if you want to be the liaison, but we're trying to build up a group for those 4 districts, so that eventually we have a liaison. And you can go to the next slide. I asked who actually had meetings in December. Roger, you agreed to do a little report. Can you?
Sure. Am I still okay? I'm still on. Yeah, I'm the liaison to Dan Crenshaw, Texas 02, and we had, I think, six of us at least to attend that meeting. It was a Zoom meeting with him. Not with him. It was with his legislative aide named John McCarthy, and he's in charge of energy and environment. But I don't think we had the full 30 minutes. We probably had about 15 or 20 minutes. But what we did discuss was we were trying to get the EPRA, which is the Energy Permitting Reform Act, which was a bipartisan bill that kind of was stuck at the time. And that was kind of CCL's push at the end in a lame duck session. It was to streamline and accelerate energy permitting process. It's one of our goals. And basically the feedback we got that he couldn't talk specifics because he had to know exactly what Dan Crenshaw was thinking in terms of the bill. But there was, he thought, some potential for permitting reform to move during the Congress. It didn't in the end. And they thought could be added to an omnibus bill or something else embedded in there. But in the end, it did not happen. And he also spoke briefly about, we asked him about the IRA bill that we're hoping that the new administration doesn't completely dismantle. And he echoed what John Curtis said in that video earlier, that there are plenty of Republicans that like portions of it. There's portions they don't like, though, and they'll use a scalpel to hopefully. I think they've written the bill so it's not easy to do to just take it apart. But anyway, there's 45Q and some of these other things that are in there are the Republicans really do like. So that's kind of the gist of our conversation.
Thanks, Roger. I also heard from Wakar from Texas 07 that they did not have a meeting, but he had conversations with the staff about the energy permitting reform. And I also had a conversation with Representative Carter of Texas 18 staff about permitting reform, and they asked for more information. So I feel like there was good feedback, and Wakar reports that as well. Is there anybody else that had a meeting or would like to make a report? Okay. The other thing that I wanted to reiterate that there are conference recordings, and you can go, if you didn't get to go to the conference, you can go look at the recordings. But I also wanted to say that it's not too early to think about going to Washington this summer. So, once we learn more about that conference, you'll be able to plan it. But as a New Year's resolution, which I include myself on this, I want everybody to think about going to Washington this summer and begin to think about ways that you can make it happen, and barriers that you might need to overcome, and share those barriers, and so that we can help if anybody wants to go to Washington and might have barriers that they need help with. So that's my messages for today.
Thank you, Judith. And I think during 2020, the 2024 conference and lobby days in Washington, D.C., I think we had roughly 7 or 8 folks from Washington that attended. Is that about right?
Right.
Right in that ballpark. So we do get a fairly good contingent of folks from Houston to go and represent us there. Thank you, Judith. I'm going to move on. Grass Tops for Court. Court was not able to attend today, but Court leads the Grass Tops team. And the objective of Grass Tops is to have meetings between our chapter, Citizens Climate Lobby here in Houston, with business leaders or faith church leaders or other leaders in the community that might be interested in joining us in our efforts of climate advocacy. And that's what Court is doing for us. Then we have Mark, leader of our grassroots team. Mark? Are you on mute, Mark?
Can you go to the next slide, Joe?
Sure.
Yeah, so my New Year's resolution this month before our next meeting is to brainstorm ideas about who might be interested in a presentation. I know several people on our steering committee have helped me with those, and if anybody in the audience has an idea, I'm open. There's my contact information.
Thank you, Mark. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Do you want to put that into the chat also?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go on. And then we have the media team, and I'm the leader of our media team. One of the big things we do is we put out our monthly CCL Houston newsletter, and I have the web links there from our last big newsletter that went out in November. December, we took the month off because we had our year-end holiday event gathering. And then this month in January, we just sent out our January newsletter this previous Sunday. Also, we like to write letters to the editor because that does make an impact. It gets our message out to the greater community. And if we have folks on the call that have never done that, it's actually quite rewarding to see your letter published, for example, in the Houston Chronicle. And if you would like to find out more about how you do that, there's an excellent link here you can click on to watch a very short video on how we go about writing letters to the editor. We do have sort of a formula that we try to follow that's successful for us. And then if anybody's interested in helping out with media, there's my contact information, my email address there. Okay, and then lastly, for chapter development, we have both Mark and Court helping out in that area. Mark, do you want to share anything about chapter development?
Just briefly, I know with Christmas a couple weeks ago and all the festivities around that, we didn't get that many new members emails which the national organization sends us periodically. But hopefully with the new year, we'll have more new people interested in our chapter, and Court and I are reaching out to them. So we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you. And then my last slide here, our Planet Earth thanks you for what you're doing to help with climate advocacy. So that's the end of our formal meeting, and we do have a couple of minutes just to have another quick roundtable. If anybody has any feedback, anything else you would like to share, just in general. Anybody? Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Joe, I would like to let one of our visitors introduce himself. He came in a little bit late.
Hi, my name is Armando. I'm a new volunteer in helping out. So thank you so much for going with Senator. I came in a little minutes like that. It's great hearing y'all presentation.
Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next month. Thank you. Anybody else want to share anything?
I just want to say that you know, I'm glad to be in the space again with CCL, and hopefully in the future I can be some more spaces with y'all, and also help y'all with any research or anything pertaining to farming or environmental justice and stuff. And I left some examples, some articles that I participated in or been in, and also left my contact information for anybody that need help or anything.
Thank you so much for joining us, Travis. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, anybody? All right, if there's nothing else, we're going to wrap up the meeting. And again, I just want to thank everybody for joining, and have a great rest of the weekend, everybody.
Thanks. See
Bye now.
y'all.